What's up, guys? Got some MMA news slash fight results today for you on the channel. Obviously, today we had Paul Hughes versus Usman Nurmagomedov go down. We got Tony Ferguson signed to the GFL, but there's some weird things going on with that. We got some new announced UFC matchups I want to talk about. Who is Islam going to fight next? All that in this video and more, guys. So leave a like on the video if you enjoy this kind of content. I appreciate you guys. Let's start off with Usman Nurmagomedov beats Paul Hughes by a majority decision. I believe he was deducted a point in round 3 for kicking Paul Hughes in the groin, as it was like his second or third offense. These guys were trading groin shots all fight, but this was an interesting fight. It was the Timu version of Khabib versus Conor. Ireland versus Dagestan 2. They dubbed it as, for the PFL lightweight championship, Usman Nurmagomedov versus Paul Hughes. And overall, I did watch the fight. It was a pretty good back and forth fight. I will say Usman's gas tank left a lot to be desired. He seemed to be gassed in about the third round. Not completely gassed, but like gasping for air. Like if he was facing a Marab in that fight, you know, a Marab-esque fighter with cardio, he'd have got cooked. He looked a lot like Umar did whenever Umar was fighting Marab in the third, fourth, and fifth round. Just kind of looked a step behind, but he was still good enough and more skilled enough to beat Paul Hughes overall 48-46, even though I do think that if Paul Hughes would have fairly won the fight being in Saudi, they would have 100% robbed him and gave it to Usman. Because if you know, you know, those judges are extremely biased over there. That's why I'm picking Cheryl Bullitt to beat Michael Venom Page, because unless Michael Venom Page knocks him out cold, the Saudi judges 100% will rob him. Either way, Usman Nurmagomedov looked decent in the fight, but I'm going to be honest, man. I don't see the next coming of Khabib. I don't see the next coming of Islam, because the talks are, right? Once Islam Makhachev retires from the UFC, Usman's going to come into the UFC, and he's going to be the next one to take the throne. It'll be Khabib, then Islam, then Usman, back-to-back lightweight champions. But I don't know, man. Listen, I know lightweight's kind of weak right now, but I don't know if I see like a dominant champion in Usman. Don't get me wrong. He is good. He has great striking. And something I've noticed out of the Nurmagomedov camp, if you guys realize, like, if you look back at Khabib, right, obviously he was a very strong chain wrestler that would get you against the fence, take you down, but also wasn't afraid to strike. It seems like these guys are going away from such a wrestling heavy base and focusing on being more well-rounded, which I think is a great thing. But you can just tell the wrestling isn't as good or isn't as dominant as it once was. Look at Umar and look at Usman. Like, I'm not saying they don't have great wrestling, but they don't have as dominant wrestling as Khabib. Even Islam doesn't have as dominant wrestling as Khabib. And I know Khabib was just built different, but I think these Dagestani guys are putting more emphasis on being more well-rounded. Either way, it was a great scrap. Usman wins by majority decision. I did think he won the fight slightly. It was a great fight. But like I said, man, I don't see a guy in Usman. No offense, I'm not trying to roast him, but I don't see a guy that's going to come to the UFC and completely take over and destroy everybody in the lightweight division. I think he can be top 5 in the UFC. I don't know if he gets to the championship. I don't know if he beats a Charles Oliveira. Granted, Charles Oliveira might be retired by the time he makes it, but I don't know if he beats an Arman Sarukian. I don't think he does. Like, a lot of these guys, I mean, even a Paddy Pimblett. I know Paddy's a meme, but Paddy can give a lot of these guys trouble. But Usman Nurmagomedov defeats Paul Hughes, improves to 19-0 as the PFL lightweight champion. Like I said, it was a great scrap. If you watched it, let me know what you think about that fight in the comments. But do you guys think that Usman Nurmagomedov can make it into the UFC and become the champion? I mean, I guess he could, but I don't know. It would have to be a weaker lightweight division. I don't see that same dominance and like just him coming to the UFC and going on a ginormous win streak like Islam and Khabib did. But either way, good performance by Usman. He improves to 19-0. He retains his belt in the PFL. Good scrap. Let's get on to the next thing I wanted to talk about, which was 314 in UFC 314 in April. Dominic Reyes returned, or Nikita Krylov returned, should I say, to face Dominic Reyes. And this is actually crazy. Dominic Reyes about to go on the greatest comeback story ever. Nikita Krylov has not fought since the beginning of 2023. Not sure why he's been out. It could be due to political issues across the world, as you know. That's what I heard a rumor of, but Nikita Krylov has been extremely inactive in the recent years, and he's going up against Dominic Reyes in April in UFC 314. Honestly, UFC 314 looks like it's going to be a pretty solid card. I wonder who the main event's going to be. Maybe Volk versus Taporia, maybe Shavkat versus Bilal, who knows, but Dominic Reyes versus Nikita Krylov. Let's talk about the matchup. Dominic Reyes obviously had an amazing 2024. He got a win over Dustin Jacoby and a win over Anthony Smith. And while not the highest level of competition, we can agree that it helped build his confidence, because we're talking about a guy who was coming off of 4 losses in a row. 3 of those losses coming by brutal KO to Jan Blachowicz, to Ryan Spann, and to Yuri Prohaska. Lost a lot of brain cells. He took some time off. He got rejuvenated. And I got to be honest, man, seeing Dominic Reyes pull out a win whenever he did over Dustin Jacoby was amazing. It was one of the best feel-good moments of 2024. And yeah, he's got the momentum back on his side. Nikita Krylov's not going to have any momentum. He hasn't fought in 2 years. Who knows where his head is? He's probably the best jiu-jitsu guy in the light heavyweight division. I know he got submitted by Paul Craig, but so did Ankalaev. So it's going to be interesting to see if the fight hits the mat, how it goes down. I don't think we've ever seen Dominic Reyes like in a jiu-jitsu scramble. Correct me if I'm wrong, but who do I favor to win this fight? I don't know, man. This is such an interesting fight. The striker Dominic Reyes versus what I would say the grappler Nikita Krylov. I probably, is it crazy to go with Dominic Reyes given that he's got the momentum on his side? Dominic Reyes looked great in 2024. He looked like he got his mojo back. Nikita Krylov is not a guy that's known to have like one punch knockout power. I mean, he's light heavyweight, so anybody can knock anybody out. But I don't know, man. Maybe Dominic Reyes is Alistair Overeem, and maybe bro's chin just got good again out of nowhere, and he can take a crack. Because sometimes you just, I don't know, maybe he had that Johnny Walker defense on his losing streak, and bro was just fighting ridiculously reckless, it seemed like, and he lost his confidence. But Dominic Reyes had his confidence back, and he's fighting a guy, Nikita Krylov, who hasn't fought in 2 years. I am going to go with Dominic Reyes, who has the momentum. We're going for the greatest comeback story in UFC history. We're pushing for Dominic Reyes to be the GOAT. This guy's going to destroy everybody, including Alex Pereira. Go up, take the belt. He's going to go up to heavyweight and take John Jones's lunch money and stuff him in a locker. No, I'm joking. But it would, imagine the storyline if Dominic Reyes can come back and get back to like a title shot in the light heavyweight division. That would be one of the most insane comebacks, given that people were telling this guy to retire like a year and a half ago. So good for Dominic Reyes. If he beats Nikita Krylov, he's once again in the top 10. Nikita Krylov ranked number 8. I think Reyes is ranked number 11. So I'm very excited for this matchup. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this one. I am going to be picking Dominic Reyes by way of decision. Let's get on to another matchup that was announced. Speaking of another returning fighter, we got Marvin Vettori versus Roman Dolidze 2. Now, I don't agree with this matchmaking. If you were going to do a rematch of Marvin Vettori, I would much rather have seen like a Paulo Costa. Listen, I know Paulo Costa doesn't deserve a jump up, but the press conference between Paulo Costa and Marvin Vettori was actually the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. And according to Marvin Vettori, he actually thought that he signed to fight Roman Kopylov, but it turns out it was Roman Dolidze. So bro had the wrong Roman. Roman Kopylov, Roman Dolidze. Marvin Vettori said, I don't care. I'm coming back against a Roman. I'm coming to get a dub. Marvin Vettori has not fought since June of 2023. Roman Dolidze, he's coming off a win over Anthony Smith up a weight class, and I think he came back down and beat Kevin Holland. So he's got a couple of wins under his belt. These guys already fought, and Marvin Vettori beat him by unanimous decision. This might actually be Marvin Vettori's last win, if I'm not mistaken. I think Marvin Vettori took that loss to either Cannonier or Whitaker and then took a long hiatus. And I've seen rumors of Marvin Vettori wanting to retire. I don't know where he's at in his career. He's still young at only 31, so I am glad he took some time off because this guy's taking a lot of damage. And being known for the greatest UFC chin in UFC history isn't a good thing. It means you can take a shot. It means you've been hit a lot. And just alone in the Vettori fighting Whitaker and Cannonier, he took an ungodly amount of damage in those fights. And yeah, man, Marvin Vettori returning back to action against Roman Dolidze. And honestly, I don't see much changing. I think it's going to be another unanimous decision win for Marvin Vettori. We get to see if Marvin Vettori upped his craft. What was he doing out this last year and a half? Was he training? Did he get some new coaches? Did he practice some new skills? We're going to see. Did he develop knockout power? We're going to see, because Marvin Vettori is known as one of the most mid fighters in the UFC. Like, he's not great anywhere. He's just kind of a jack of all trades. He has solid striking. He has solid wrestling. He has solid jiu-jitsu, but he doesn't really excel anywhere. He's just kind of a meathead that charges forward, and you can't really do anything about it because he has an iron chin. And Roman Dolidze's striking is not the best. It looked a little improved against Anthony Smith, but it's Anthony Smith. And Roman Dolidze, if it hits the mat, can be a huge problem. The issue is he's terrible at getting the fight to the ground. So I think this is going to be a stand-up battle, and I think we're just going to see Marvin Vettori pick and prod at Roman Dolidze to win another unanimous decision. That's my prediction for this fight. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about that. But yeah, I'm excited for Marvin Vettori to get back in there. He's always exciting. and funny at press conferences. I can't wait to see his media day, to see the stuff he says about why he was out, what he's been doing. I'm excited for the return of Marvin Meathead Vettori. Can't wait for it, guys. Let's get on to the next thing, which was Tony Ferguson signing to the GFL. Now, the GFL, I've talked to people on my Discord channel about this. The GFL seems to be like, I don't know if it's fraudulent, but they're signing fighters. Like Tony Ferguson hasn't even been officially released from the UFC, as far as I know. I follow this Twitter account called Roster Watch, and they typically tell you every single time a fighter's cut. And I never saw Tony Ferguson was like fighter removed Tony Ferguson. I haven't seen the UFC say that they part ways with Tony Ferguson. I haven't seen Tony Ferguson say he parted ways with the UFC. All we've seen is GFL post on their Instagram that they have signed Tony Ferguson. And also, Rampage Jackson was saying he doesn't know how the GFL signed Rashad Evans when he's boxing him in a boxing match. So I don't know what's going on with the GFL. Do you guys think it's legit? Do you guys think it's just all to build hype? I mean, I would love to see these old heads go at it and it kind of be more fair fights, because it's a level playing field. You know, you got all the old heads going up against each other. I think Tyron Woodley was the #1 pick in the GFL draft, which is quite funny. Tyron Woodley of all people, but people forget, man. Tyron Woodley was a 4-time defending champion, dude. Don't sleep on him. But Tyron Woodley is on a 6-fight losing streak, 2 losses to Jake Paul and 4 losses in MMA. So this guy desperately needs a win. He's also going to be 43 years old. So the GFL is absolutely unk-maxing. They did their draft yesterday, which I didn't really watch, but I know the GFL signed a lot of fighters, and if they can actually put on these fights with these old heads, I think a lot of people, including myself, would be excited. Now, don't get me wrong. Guys like Tony Ferguson, this guy was in the UFC from 14 years, I believe. So from 2011 all the way up to 2025, if this is true. And Tony Ferguson started his UFC career off, I think, like 1-1. And then he went on to go on like a 12-fight win streak. And yeah, man, since that 12-fight win streak, he's been on an 8-fight losing streak. I really wish Tony Ferguson would hang up the gloves. I'm going to be honest. Even fighting an older fighter, I don't think Tony Ferguson beats anybody in the GFL. He's just too old. He's ran out of testosterone. If David Goggins, the saltiest man on earth, cannot help you win a fight, there's nothing in this world that's going to help you win a fight. Listen, I love Tony Ferguson. I've been a fan of him since before he went on his 12-fight win streak in the Ultimate Fighter day, where he was like, "Where's your kid at? Where's your kid at? Where's your son?" I was a fan in those days, but Tony Ferguson, man, I really wish he would call it a career. I feel like Tony could be a great coach. He has a good mind for the game. He could be the David Goggins of MMA coaches, training guys in Big Bear, training the next Doris Knight in the UFC. That's what we need to see. But either way, if Tony Ferguson is going to get a win, if the GFL is actually going to be putting on fights for these old heads, I guess this is going to be Tony Ferguson's best chance to get a win, because either way, this guy continued to fight in the UFC. He was going to continue to get either submitted or knocked out because, like I said, man, he's 40 years old, soon to be 41 in February, and this guy hasn't won a fight in 6 years. So, yeah, I think this is not, I wouldn't say this is best case scenario for Tony Ferguson. Best case scenario would have been he retired and maybe went to coaching, but this is a better case scenario than fighting the top level in the UFC. Do you guys think that the GFL is a sham? Like I said, I've been talking to a lot of my friends and buddies in the MMA community, and some people aren't buying the GFL, and they think it's like all a hype thing because like Tony Ferguson hasn't even officially been announced to be cut from the UFC. If he has, let me know in the comments, and am I an absolute casual? But I looked on a couple websites and I didn't see anywhere where it said like people were saying that Tony Ferguson got cut from the UFC because he signed to the Global Fight League, but nowhere does it officially say on any like official terms that Tony Ferguson was dismissed from the UFC. I don't know. I mean, if he is, good for him. I don't see why the UFC would re-sign him on an 8-fight losing streak either way. But yeah, man, congrats to Tony Ferguson, I guess, for signing to the Global Fight League. It does. If they can, like I said, if they can actually put on fights in the Global Fight Leagues with these old heads, we could be in for some underrated entertainment. But let me know what you guys think in the comments about the Global Fight League. And yeah, let's get on to the next topic I want to talk about, which is Conor McGregor talking about the reason that the Logan Paul boxing match didn't come to fruition. Now, if you guys remember, about a few weeks ago, I think it was about a month and a half ago, I was looking at UFC news and I saw that Conor McGregor versus Logan Paul booked for a boxing match in India. And I was extremely surprised because I was like, hold on, this guy is still under UFC contract. The UFC is obviously going to want to milk as much as they can out of Conor McGregor. He's the biggest name in mixed martial arts history. So they were going to try to milk as much as they could out of McGregor. There's no way they're going to allow him to do a boxing match. After the Floyd Mayweather boxing match, Dana White said that he never wanted to go outside the UFC and do this boxing thing again. It's too much of a mess. The cross promoting is a nightmare. So I was like, there's no way that the UFC is going to allow Conor McGregor to box Logan Paul when he's still under contract. And I was correct. Conor McGregor says the UFC wasn't interested in the Logan Paul boxing match, so they nixed it. Conor McGregor, talking to the Schmo, said that he wanted to get the fight with Logan Paul done, create the boxing match, but the UFC was like, no, we're not having any of that. You're going to return to the UFC because obviously the UFC, I think Conor McGregor has 2 fights left on his contract, so McGregor could be stalling out his contract. I think your contract expires like 5 years from when you sign it, and I think he signed a contract in 2021. And that means that his contract will be up in 2026, 5 years later. Who knows if that's true, but the UFC is obviously going to want to re-sign Conor McGregor because if they can get him on a pay-per-view. I don't think, listen, before I even say what I'm going to say, I don't think Conor McGregor ever fights again. I've held this opinion for a while now. I do not think we see Conor McGregor back in the cage. This guy is coked out of his mind. He's not living the life that's conducive to being a top MMA fighter anymore. There's just no world where I see Conor McGregor competing in the UFC again. And if he does, I think he loses to any ranked fighter in any division. He's just not that guy anymore, man. He's going to be 37 in July. He hasn't fought since 2021. But yeah, I kind of figured that the UFC were not going to be letting this guy go in another boxing match and cross-promoting with him. Not to mention, they want to milk Conor McGregor for every dime that he has. He's the biggest name in the UFC, so they're going to try to get him in the UFC. But another thing I want to talk about, man, and this is just pretty sad. Look at McGregor in this picture. This is him promoting the BKFC press conference between Jeremy Stevens and who is it, Eddie Alvarez. Funny that he fought both of those guys. Now he's promoting a bare knuckle fight. But just like how much this guy's fallen off, man. Look at his face. He looks like he's aging by the day, man. This guy is 36 and he looks like he's 50, man. Conor McGregor fall off needs to be studied. This guy has one of the craziest fall off we've ever seen. He got dibble-dabbled into drugs and alcohol. Ever since he had that Floyd Mayweather fight, he has not been the same guy. Even if you watch his interviews back in the day, McGregor always admitted that he got into a bit of party. And even in the Aldo fight build-up, he was like, partying is weakness for the soul, my friend. So I try not to engage in that too much. But it seems like McGregor has become everything he's hated, man. I just look at him. He looks to be in terrible health, terrible shape. He's looked like he's aged 10 years in the last 2 years. And I want to say I feel bad for him, but on one hand, but it's like on the other hand, he's doing this to himself, man. This is proof that having all the money in the world can ruin your life. Like McGregor, sure, he has generational wealth, but he's completely tarnished his legacy and he's tarnished like his reputation as a man in general. Ever since the whole Floyd Mayweather boxing match and Proper 12, he's not been the same guy. We got a glimpse of the same guy whenever he fought Dustin Poirier the second time. He came in as like Mr. Nice Guy and he looked somewhat healthy, but I'd say the change in McGregor, like the huge change we saw, was after he broke his leg versus versus Dustin Poirier in the third fight. And he took the steroids, which we obviously know he did for recovery. And he got a balloon face and his face was red and he just seemed to be jacked. Ever since then, he has not been the same guy. He's not as witty on the mic. He seems to always be, on the the booger sugar, as they call it. And he just doesn't seem like the same guy, man. And it's so sad to see because I've been here for McGregor's entire career, from when he knocked out Marcus Brimage in the first round to when he knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds to when he fought Floyd Mayweather and got the payday. And it's like part of me was happy to see him get that payday, but another part of me is like sad because this guy's going on one of the most generational downfalls we'll ever see. Like in terms of like being at the top of the sport and being respected as an athlete to where he is now, McGregor has had one of the biggest fall offs in combat sports history. But let me know what you guys think about that. Conor McGregor says the UFC is not interested in the Logan Paul boxing match. Like I said, no surprise there. The UFC were never going to let this guy fight outside of his contract. But yeah, I just wanted to cover this and talk about just how he looks awful, man. He just doesn't look good. But let's get on to the last thing I wanted to talk about, and that is who Islam Makhachev is going to fight. So Islam obviously was scheduled to fight Arman Tsarukyan, right? And Arman Tsarukyan pulled out of UFC 311. So Marcano steps up. He submits Marcano in a minute. So now he's in this weird position, right? He's already beat Charles. He's already beat Arman, but he was scheduled for the rematch. Arman's not sure when he's going to be coming back. But Ali Abdelaziz, and keep in mind, this is Ali Abdelaziz, so we do have to take what he says with a grain of salt. But he said the UFC has a completely different plan for Islam, which doesn't include Oliveira, Arman, or Ilias, but it's an unpredictable sport, and you don't know what can happen. Now, it's very interesting. The first thing that comes to mind is him going up to welterweight and facing Bilal. There's a lot of rumors that Islam is just going to say, I don't care about our friendship. Let's fight. I want to be a double champion. And even when you look at Islam, like talking about going up and fighting Bilal. It's like he wants to, but he doesn't want to be disrespectful. Like, you can see it in his eyes. He's like, man, I want to go up and face Bilal. I don't care. But he's like, also like, brother, I have to respect him, brother. But there's also talks of him going up against Dricus du Plessis, which could be what it is, because Ali Abdelaziz is saying it doesn't include Oliveira, Arman, or Ilias. Could be going up and facing Dricus du Plessis. And look, man, at the end of the day, you know the cliche, weight classes exist for a reason. I think Dricus du Plessis would mop the floor with Islam. First of all, him fighting at 185, he would be extremely fat. Imagine Islam like not cutting down to 155. He would be dwarfed by Dricus, who's a massive middleweight. I think Dricus in the cage is like maybe like 210, 215 pounds. He's like Rainier de Ritter size, which is funny because they have a similar style. Looney Tune style, but he's like Rainier de Ritter style size. Like Rainier de Ritter recently, his weight was reviewed in his in-fight cage weight against Kevin Holland was 212. I can imagine Dricus is around the same size. Dricus is a massive middleweight, and if Islam were to fight Dricus, he would be undersized by 30 to 40 pounds. It'd be a massive size advantage for Dricus, and I just don't see a path to victory, man. Like I said, there's weight classes for a reason. The power is going to be different. The pressure. And Islam's not going to be able to take him down. I think this is a complete mismatch, and Dricus would absolutely wipe the floor with Islam. And I think this would be a very gimmicky fight. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. If Islam were to pull this off and somehow get it done, this might be the most impressive feat in UFC history. A modern UFC champion going up 2 weight classes, 30 pounds above, and beating the guy and taking his belt would be absolutely insane. But I just don't see a world where that happen. There's also rumors I hear that he could be facing Khamzat Chimaev. Islam versus Khamzat. Again, we saw, if you guys remember a video, what Khamzat versus Arman Sarukian in a training video. Khamzat was literally treating Arman like a little boy. Like, he was tossing him around and playing with him like he was a toy. And I don't think Islam would be much different, man. So I don't want to see Khamzat versus Islam. I don't want to see Dricus versus Islam. Those are both gimmick fights. And I give Islam like a 5 to 10% chance to win either of those fights, maybe even less, because like I said, there's a reason the UFC has weight classes, and I just don't see a world where Islam can do anything to Dricus or Khamzat in the grappling or even in the striking. Those guys are way bigger. They can take a shot better. I mean, he's going to be throwing tic tacs at them, and they're going to be laughing. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Who do you guys think Islam is going to face next? I personally think it'll be the winner of Arman versus Oliveira, because I really don't believe a word that comes out of Ali Abdelaziz's mouth. He's been lying for years. But leave a like on the video if you guys enjoy this new style of content. I really enjoy making these videos and keeping you guys updated on what's going on in the MMA world. Like and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I appreciate you guys. I'm out, guys, and peace.